My name is Mary. I lived in a beautiful house with soft cream walls, flower pots on the balcony, and a husband who kissed me every morning before he left for work. His name was Adrian. People always said we looked like the perfect couple, young, driven, always smiling in photographs. And maybe, for a while, we were. Mornings in our home were like gentle rituals. I'd wake up early, make coffee just the way he liked it, black with 1 sugar, and watch him button his shirt as sunlight poured into our bedroom. Sometimes he'd pull me close and whisper, "I don't deserve you, Mary," with a soft laugh in his voice, and I would smile, because I believed him. I didn't know that people say things like that when they're hiding something. At night, we'd eat dinner together while he told me stories from the office. He worked in branding, sleek suits, long meetings, the kind of job that made him important at parties. I'd listen, laugh, and refill his plate. I never told him how often I was lonely during the day, how quiet the house felt without his voice. But I didn't complain, because I thought we were building something real. We talked about starting a family. He said he wasn't ready yet, and I trusted that. I gave him time, space, everything. Love, I told myself, is about patience. Looking back, I realize love without truth is just a slow kind of heartbreak. That night, just a few weeks before everything fell apart, he came home later than usual. His tie was loose, his eyes tired. I asked if he was okay. He kissed my forehead and said, "Work's just been crazy." Then he went straight to the shower. He left his phone on the kitchen counter, unlocked. I didn't check it. Not that night. I wish I had asterisk if I had picked up his phone that night, maybe I would have seen the messages. Maybe he could have caught it early before the silence grew sharp, before the warmth in our home turned cold. But I didn't. I just stood there, staring at that screen, glowing softly, on the kitchen counter, like it was mocking me. His name, Medrian, was set against a photo of us at the beach, his arm around me, both of us laughing into the wind. I remember thinking, he still uses our photo as wallpaper. That has to mean something, right? So I left it. I turned off the stove, set the dishes in the sink, and went to bed with the kind of quiet hope only fools sleep in. The next morning, he brought me flowers, not just any flowers, my favorite, white tulips. He said it was because he passed a florist on his way home and thought of me. I smiled like any wife would. I said, "Thank you," and kissed his cheek. But something didn't feel right. He didn't look me in the eyes. He held Meliki was apologizing for something I hadn't been told. Still, I convinced myself, he's just tired. Don't overthink it. You're lucky, Mary. So many women don't even get flowers. That night, while folding laundry, I found a gold bracelet in the pocket of his coat, delicate, elegant, definitely not mine. I held it in my palm for what felt like hours. It was warm, like it had just come off someone's wrist. There was a tiny heart charm attached with the initials LM etched into it. I waited until he came out of the shower. I held it up, dangling between my fingers. "Whose is this?" I asked. He blinked too quickly. "Oh, that's probably from a campaign we're doing. One of the interns was showing samples for a new client." I must have shoved it in my pocket by accident. I nodded slowly. "So, a bracelet just fell into your coat pocket." He laughed. "You're cute when you're jealous." Jealous. That word hit me like ice. It wasn't jealousy. It was instinct. And it was starting to scream louder. I let it go. Not because I believed him, but because I needed to believe him. Because the truth, if spoken out loud, might tear my world apart. That night, I lay awake, my back turned to him, listening to his breath slow into sleep. I held the bracelet under my pillow like it could whisper answers in the dark, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt completely alone. The next morning, I woke up before Adrian. The sun was just beginning to stretch its light across our bedroom walls, and the air felt unusually still. He was lying beside me, his arm draped over the edge of the bed, breathing peacefully like nothing in the world could touch him. I slid my hand under my pillow, pulling out the bracelet again. It was cold now, soulless. I stared at it for a long time, my thumb brushing over the engraved LM. I wanted to believe his story. I wanted to erase my own doubt, but what happened next made that impossible. As I stripped the sheets to do laundry, something slipped out from the bed covers and landed on the floor with a soft clink. The same bracelet. I froze. My heart stopped. I stared at the one in my hand, then the one on the floor. Identical, right, down to the charm. Two of them, not one. Two. I picked them up with trembling fingers. He hadn't just lied, he had forgotten. He had carelessly stuffed one in his coat pocket and left the other in our bed. Our bed. That moment shattered something inside me. I waited until he went to work. Then I opened his closet, his drawers, every compartment I had once so lovingly arranged, and I saw at tiny signs I had been too blind to see. A receipt for dinner for two. A lipstick-smudged napkin in his briefcase, and a hotel keycard tucked inside the lining of his blazer. My hands shook, my stomach turned. But not from shock, from clarity. The man I loved was living a second life. One he didn't invite me into. I sat down on the floor, both bracelets in my lap, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket soaked in betrayal. That night, I didn't say a word to him. I cooked dinner, smiled, and asked about his day just like always. I matched his lies with my silence. But in my mind, I was already slipping away. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too busy texting someone beneath the table, pretending he was checking emails. When he kissed my forehead goodnight, I didn't kiss him back, and when he turned away to sleep, I whispered to the dark, "Who is she, Adrian, and how long have you been giving her what used to be mine?" I didn't expect an answer, not from him, and certainly not from the universe. But sometimes, when you start asking the right questions, the truth finds a way to break through. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of day that felt too normal for something. I was sitting alone in a small cafe near Adrian's office. It was one of our favorite spots, or at least, it used to be. I ordered my usual, a cappuccino with extra foam, and sat by the window, trying to gather the courage to check his phone records. I had written down the number from the hotel receipt. I just hadn't decided what to do with it yet. Then I heard it. Two women behind me were deep in conversation. I wasn't listening at first, but then one of them said his name. "Adrian. You mean the branding guy with the crazy eyes and the dimples?" I froze. My hands gripped the cup so tightly I thought it might crack. "Yeah," the other woman giggled. "My friend Lisa is dating him. He's married, but he says it's complicated." My heart dropped. Lisa, L.M. My ears burned. My vision blurred. I wanted to turn around and scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, every muscle in my body locked in place, as if moving would break me apart. "He promised he's leaving his wife soon," the woman continued. "They've been seeing each other for a while. He even bought her a bracelet with her initials. Isn't that cute?" Cute. That word crawled under my skin like poison. I got up slowly, left a crumpled bill on the table, and walked out without finishing my drink. The air outside was thick, but I couldn't breathe. My legs moved on their own, down the sidewalk, past the traffic, past everything familiar. I walked and walked until I found myself standing outside Adrian's office building. I looked up at the glass windows where he probably sat, smiling, working, lying, and in that moment, I didn't just feel heartbroken, I felt erased. He hadn't just betrayed me, he had rewritten the story of our marriage without telling me, and now, he was offering the best chapters to someone else. That night I didn't go home. I checked into a small hotel with nothing but my phone and a storm inside me. I stared at the contact list until my thumb hovered over a name I hadn't dialed in years. My older sister. She had always told me, "Don't ignore your gut, Mary, it's smarter than your heart." And for the first time, I was ready to listen. My sister picked up on the second ring. "Mary," she said, her voice thick with sleep and concern. "Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I said no, and I think I've known for a while. That night, I told her everything. The bracelet, the women at the cafe, the way Adrian's eyes had stopped meeting mine. She didn't say, "I told you so," even though she could have. She just said, "Come home." If it didn't top the next morning, I returned to the house. Adrian was already dressed. Sipping coffee like the world was fine. "I stayed with my sister last night," I said, dropping my bag by the door. He barely blinked. "You should have texted." I stared at him, waiting for a flicker of guilt. Nothing. Just then, as if he were reading off a grocery list, he said the words that broke whatever pieces I had. "Mary, I think we should get a divorce." No apology. No explanation. Just, I laughed. It came out sharp, bitter, like something choking its way out of me. "You think we should get a divorce?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, but not with remorse. With relief. "I'm not happy anymore," he said. "We've changed?" I echoed. "Or did you just trade me for someone new?" He looked away. "I don't want to fight," he muttered. "Let's just make this clean. There is nothing clean about being discarded like old furniture while your husband buys bracelets for someone who only knows half of him. I stood in the kitchen where we used to cook together, where he once danced with me barefoot on a rainy night, and I realized he wasn't just leaving me, he had already left. He just hadn't had the courage to say it until now. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just nodded, walked past him, and quietly said, okay, because he thought he was ending the story, but I was just beginning mine. The divorce papers arrived on a Wednesday, wrapped in a plain envelope that felt heavier than it should have. No note, no final words. Just his signature on every page. Neat, efficient, heartless. I sat at the kitchen table, the same place where we once planned vacations and shared inside jokes, and stared at the papers until my vision blurred. His handwriting looked so familiar, so unchanged, and yet the man behind it had disappeared. I didn't sign them right away. Instead, I walked to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, heart racing, holding the pregnancy test I had bought on a whim the day before, part instinct, part desperation. I hadn't told anyone, not even my sister. It had been weeks since I missed my period. I had chalked it up to stress, but deep down, I knew that the result appeared faster than I expected. 2 lines positive. My hands flew to my mouth. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or scream. There, I was abandoned, betrayed, discarded, and carrying the child of the man who didn't want him anymore. I sank to the floor, my back against the cold tiles, and whispered to no one, what do I know? I wanted to tell him. I really did. Some small, stubborn part of me believed it would matter. That he'd come running. That he'd remember who I was, who we were. But then I remembered the bracelet. The whisper in the cafe. The way he said clean like I was a stain to scrub out of his life. No, this wasn't his story anymore. He'd given it away. This child, my child, was mine to protect, to raise, to love. And so, before the sun set that day, I signed the divorce papers. Every line, every clause, every insult disguised as legal language. I slid them into the return envelope and drop-headed them into the mailbox without a second thought. I had lost a husband, but I had gained something far more powerful. A reason to fight. That's what my son became the moment I heard his heartbeat for the first time. That soft, fluttering rhythm on the monitor felt louder than any betrayal Adrian had ever delivered. It reminded me I was still alive and I still had purpose. I named him Noel. He came into the world on a rainy afternoon, screaming like he had something to prove. And maybe he did. Maybe he felt all the silence I had swallowed during my pregnancy, the tears I cried behind closed doors, the nights I whispered, "You're not alone," into my belly even when I felt like I was. Adrian never called, never asked, not even once, but that didn't stop him from playing the doting gentleman online. I saw it all, his curated happiness, his press photos, his arm around Lisa, the same woman whose initials were carved into those cursed bracelets. I remember one photo in particular. They were at a charity gala, all dressed in black and gold. The caption read, "Power couple with hearts of gold." I nearly dropped my phone from laughing. He had never volunteered a single hour when we were together, never showed up to the shelter I used to work at, and yet, there he was, donating smiles to cameras like they were a currency. I watched them build their perfect image while I built a life from scratch. With cracked hands, sleepless nights, and lullabies sung with trembling hope. I worked freelance, from home, took side gigs, sold old clothes just to keep the lights on. And yet, I never regretted a single moment with Noel. He had Adrian's eyes. That much was undeniable. But where Adrian's were cold and calculating, Noel's were wide, curious, filled with a kind of honesty I hadn't seen in a long time. Every time I looked at him, I whispered a silent vow. I will never lie to you. I will never leave, and I will never let anyone write over your worth. Still, sometimes I wondered if Adrian knew. If somewhere in that spotless life he'd manufactured, he felt a tug in his chest when Noel odd. If he had dreams where he saw a boy with his face, and didn't know why it made him ache, but those thoughts always passed. Because the truth was simple. He chose to forget us, so I chose to move forward quietly, fiercely, and without apology. Until one day, 3 years later, I received a message from an unknown number. A name, a location, a date. Adrian was getting married. My fingers tightened around the phone as I stared at the screen, blinking to make sure it wasn't some cruel joke. The message was short, a screenshot of a digital invitation, nose under name. No explanation, just a date, a venue, and their names printed in gold script. Adrian Thomas and Lisa Mendez together with their families. I felt the air leave my lungs. Their families, it hit me harder than I expected. Not just the betrayal of seeing his name alongside hers, but the realization that I, the mother of his child, wasn't even a footnote in this version of his life. He hadn't just moved on. He had rewritten history entirely. I should have deleted it, blocked the number, let it go, but I didn't. Instead, I zoomed in. Studied the location. A luxury villa, 2 hours out of the city. Private, lavish, the kind of place people go to show off their perfect ending, and yet, someone had sent it to me, not by accident. A minute later, a second message came through. You didn't hear it from me, but you deserved to know. No name, no signature. Just that. I sat there frozen, Noel playing with his blocks beside me, his laughter echoing like Amory from a different lifetime. And then a thought struck me so hard, I had to grip. Edible to stay grounded. What will he tell people when they ask why his own son isn't at the wedding? The answer came quickly. He won't. He's never told anyone we exist. He left me. He abandoned Noel. But now he was parading around in a white tuxedo, preparing to say vows about honesty and loyalty. No, he didn't get to have a picture wedding while pretending I never happened. While pretending Noel never happened. I stood up, trembling not from pain, but from the fire rising in my chest, and for the first time in years, I looked in the mirror and saw someone who wasn't broken. I saw a mother, a woman, someone with nothing left to lose. And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to watch this wedding from afar. I was going to walk in and show him what he left behind. Asterisk, but the decision wasn't as simple as it sounded. For 3 days, I paced the living room floor while Noel napped, going back and forth in mimic. One moment I was confident, ready to stand tall and face the people who had said. The next, I was paralyzed by doubt. What if he denied everything? What if Lisa didn't even know about me? What if I embarrassed myself? Worse, what if I embarrassed Noel? But each time fear crept in. I looked at my son, his tiny hands, his curious eyes, and reminded myself that I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't crashing the wedding to Makia scene. I was showing up so the truth could finally stand in the same room as all the lies. Still, on the morning of the wedding, I sat at the edge of my bed with the invitation in one hand and Noel's favorite stuffed elephant in the other. My heart was racing so loudly, I could barely hear my own thoughts. Then Noel ran into the room, barefoot and laughing, his little voice cutting through the chaos inside me. He climbed into my lap, held my face with his tiny hands, and said, "Mommy." Usad, I smiled through tears I didn't know had fallen. "No, baby. I'm just brave today." He hugged me without asking why, without needing answers, and that's when it became clear. Hiding would have meant accepting his story as the only version, the one where I was just a woman he used to know, the one where Noel never existed. No, we were not his secret. I stood up, opened my closet, and pulled out the only dress I had that made me feel powerful, soft blue. Simple, but strong. I braided my hair the way I used to when Adrian loved me. Only this time, it wasn't for him, it was for me, and for the little boy holding my hand as we stepped out the door. I didn't bring rage. I didn't bring drama. I brought truth, and sometimes, truth is the loudest thing you can wear into a room full of liars. The villa was perched on a hill, surrounded by manicured gardens and a stone courtyard glowing in the golden hour sun. It was beautiful, exactly the kind of place Adrian would choose to showcase his version of a fairy tale. As we stepped through the iron gates, I felt Noel's tiny hand squeezed mine. "Where are we going, Mommy?" he asked, his voice soft, curious. "To meet someone," I said, steadying my breath. "Someone who forgot how important you were." Our guests were already arriving, dressed in flowing gowns and sleek tuxedos. A string quartet played near the entrance, and waiters in white gloves passed glasses of champagne to strangers, laughing like they'd never told a lie in their lives. No one noticed me at first. Not until we stepped into the main hall. Me in my blue dress, Noel holding my hand, both office walking straight down the aisle between the rows of white chairs just minutes before the ceremony was set to begin. Gasps, whispers, eyes turned like dominoes, and then I saw him. Adrian stood at the altar in a white suit, smiling like he owned the day. Lisa stood beside him, radiant, unaware. The moment his eyes found mine, everything changed. His smile fell, his hands dropped. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I kept walking, my heels tapped against the marble floor, each step sharper than the last. Guests leaned to another, murmuring, "Who is she, and is that a child?" And then, before I could speak, Noel tugged my hand and pointed. "Mommy," he said, loud and clear. "That's Daddy, right?" You could hear the air leave the room. Adrian's face turned white. Lisa stepped back slightly, her brows furrowing. "Adrian, what is he talking about?" I stopped just a few steps away from the altar. Calm, collected. The kind of calm that only comes after years of silence. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice steady, "but I think your guests should know the man standing beside you has a 3-year-old son, and this is the first time he's ever seen him." Gasps again. Noel squeezed my hand tighter. Lisa turned sharply toward Adrian. "What is she talking about?" Adrian opened his mouth but no words came out. Just silence. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power, because I had walked in with nothing but truth. And that truth had just shattered his perfect fantasy. Adrian stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, the weight of 100 eyes crashing down on him like waves. His silence was louder than any denial. He looked at Noel, really looked at them for the first time in his life. And in that moment, I saw the panic in his eyes give way to something else. Recognition. But it was too late for recognition. Lisa stepped away from him, her voice cold and sharp. "Adrian, is it true?" He tried to say something, anything, but no sound came. Just a weak shake of the head, as if denying it would undo the years he'd buried. I turned to the crowd. I hadn't planned to speak. I hadn't rehearsed a single word. But standing there, in the middle of that beautiful lie, I realized my voice had waited long enough. "My name is Mary," I began, loud and clear. "And 3 years ago, I was Adrian's wife. We had a quiet little life, filled with promises he never intended to keep. And just after he left me without a word of explanation, I found out I was pregnant." A ripple of shock passed through the guests. Some turned to one another, others just stared, frozen. "This little boy," I continued, resting my hand on Noel's shoulder, "is his son. The son he has never met, never supported, never acknowledged. Not once." I paused, locking eyes with Lisa. "I didn't come here to ruin a wedding. I came because the truth deserves to exist, especially when someone tries so hard to bury it." Lisa's eyes welled with tears. She looked between Adrian and me, then at Noel. Her hands began to tremble. "I thought I was the beginning of something new," she whispered, "but I was just the cover-up for what he ran from." Adrian finally stepped forward. "Mary, please, this isn't the place." "Oh, but it is," I said, lifting my chin. "Because you built this entire place on lies. And I won't my son grow up thinking silence is kindness." Noel clung to me, his small arms around my waist. And just like that, I knew I hadn't come for revenge. I came so that one day, when Noel is old enough to ask where his father was, I can look Jim in the eyes and say, "I told the truth." In front of everyone, Adrian turned away. The ceremony never resumed. Guests began to leave, some in hushed confusion, others in disgust. Lisa walked out without looking back. And I walked out, too, but this time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. The days that followed felt strangely quiet. Like the world had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. I expected chaos. I expected backlash. I expected someone to call and tell me I had gone too far. But instead, there was silence. Lisa never reached out. Adrian didn't show up at my door. No lawsuits, no messages, just quiet, the kind of quiet that lets you finally hear your own voice again. I spent those days baking with Noel, singing to him as we folded laundry, and letting the sunlight pour into rooms that had once felt heavy with grief. I was lighter now. Not because the pain had disappeared, but because I had released the weight of hiding. One morning, a letter arrived in the mail, no name, no return address. Inside was a check signed by Adrian. There was no note, no apology, number, attempt to justify what he had done, just a number, and a signature. It wasn't money that impressed me, it was the silence wrapped around it. That paper wasn't a gesture of love or responsibility, it was guilt, it was shame. It was a man trying to fix what he broke without ever facing it. I put the check in a drawer. I didn't need it to raise Noel. Later that week, while I was picking up Noel from daycare, one of the other mothers approached me. Her eyes were wide with curiosity, but her voice was soft. "Were you at the Alvin's wedding?" I froze. "I didn't mean to pry," she continued quickly, "but I saw a video. Someone posted it before they were asked to take it down. Video, of course. Everything is filmed these days, especially the ugly parts. I braced myself for judgment, for whispers, for that pitied look people give to women who cause scenes. But she surprised me. She smiled. I just wanted to say, that was brave, what you did. Most of us wouldn't have dared. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat tightened, but this time, it wasn't from sadness, it was from something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Validation, because for years, I had been shrinking. Quiet, careful, polite, but now I had shown the world the truth and it didn't break me, it freed me. Asterisk, not because he changed, not because he apologized. He didn't, he never did. It was because I changed, because I stopped waiting for the ending I thought I deserved and started writing the one I needed. For a long time, I thought closure would come when Adrian finally looked me in the eyes and said, "I'm sorry." I imagined it so many times, what I'd say, how I'd stand, how he'd break down and admit what he had done to me, to us, to Noelle. But that moment never came. And eventually, I realized it didn't have to. Hate is heavy. It drags behind you like a second skin. And when you carry a child, when you're responsible for shaping a little soul, you don't have room for bitterness. It poisons everything, so I let go. Not because he deserved it, but because I did. One evening, as I tucked Noel into bed, he looked up at me and asked the one question I had always dreaded. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" My heart skipped. For a moment, the silence was deafening. But I looked at him at his small, soft face, waiting for something honest and I knew what to say. "He's someone who couldn't stay," I said gently, "but that doesn't mean you're not loved." He stared at me, wide-eyed, but he didn't want us. I swallowed hard. Sometimes people don't know how to love the right way. But that has nothing to do with you, okay? You are the best thing I've ever had. And you were never the problem. He smiled. He hugged me. And just like that, the question passed. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the sky change color. The check Adrian had sent was still in the drawer, untouched. I hadn't cashed it. I didn't need to. Because I had something better than revenge. I had peace. He could keep his parties, his pictures, his polished life. Let the world believe what it wanted. I had the truth. I had Noelle. I had me, and that was enough. So no, I don't hate him anymore, because hate would still make him the center of my story, and he lost that right a long time ago.